This story takes place when I was 15 years old. My best friend, Anthony, invited me over for the night since his parents would be away for the weekend. I rode my bike to his house, parked it in his backyard, and let myself in through the back door. We played nearly every video game he had, from FIFA to Call of Duty, surrounded by spilled popcorn and junk food scattered across the floor. As the night went on, we transitioned from gaming to watching a movie, but soon grew bored and started making prank calls around 10 o'clock. Anthony called a few pizza places, and when it was my turn, I dialed random numbers, hoping to reach someone at home. On my fourth attempt, a man with a deep, rough voice answered with a casual "yeah" instead of a greeting. Anthony's laughter in the background made me stumble over my words, causing me to burst into laughter myself. I had never done a prank call before, and I was clearly not good at it. The man on the other end fell silent. I managed to regain my composure and continued. Sir? Would it be all right if I borrowed one of the wheels from your car?" "What's your name, kid?" he asked. "My name is Bob," I replied. "Really? You sure it's not Anthony?" That hit me like a brick. I glanced at Anthony, whose face was filled with fear. I hung up immediately, not wanting to stay on the line for another second. "Anthony? Who the hell was that?" I asked. I don't know," he stammered. "Does your caller ID show your name or something?" "No, it shows my dad's name." We jumped on the computer to research how someone could get Anthony's name so quickly. It didn't make sense. He was too young to be listed on any personal information sharing websites. We even posted a question on Yahoo Answers, but no one had a similar experience. I suggested calling his dad, but Anthony was hesitant because he wasn't supposed to have anyone over for the weekend. We decided to sleep in the living room and resumed watching the movie we had paused earlier. Just as the prank call faded from my mind, Anthony and I exchanged glances when we heard the front storm door opening, followed by the doorknob turning. It only turned halfway before the lock stopped it. Anthony quickly turned off the TV, and I crept to the window to see who it was. I opened the blinds slightly and spotted a tall figure standing outside. He noticed the movement and turned to look at me. I quickly shut the blinds and motioned to Anthony that we should hide in the kitchen. We heard the gate to the backyard opening right outside the kitchen window. "God damn it," I said. "I forgot to shut the back door." Anthony urged me to run and close it. I dashed down the hallway leading to the back door, but froze when I saw a silhouette outside. I don't think he noticed me, but he was clearly looking into the house. He opened the door and stepped inside. I tiptoed to the kitchen and signaled for Anthony to follow me upstairs. We made it to his room as quietly as possible, shutting the door to avoid making noise. Crawling under his bed, we were hidden by the cloth covering the bottom, which made us invisible unless someone moved it. The doors downstairs opened one by one, getting closer to the stairs. Thumps began to echo up the stairs, and soon the figure was right outside our door. When he opened the door, I could hear Anthony's breathing, too loud for comfort. I had to cover his mouth with my hand. The room fell silent. We lay still for what felt like an eternity until I whispered to Anthony, "Do you think we can make a run for it?" Just as he was about to answer, a horrifying scream filled the air as Anthony was seemingly dragged out from under the bed. I crawled out and saw him struggling with the man. Desperate, I looked for anything to use as a weapon and grabbed a screwdriver from Anthony's nightstand. I rushed at the man and plunged the screwdriver into his back. He screamed in agony, releasing Anthony and giving us a chance to escape. Running onto the road would have exposed our position, and reaching the neighbor's house would take too long. Instead, we dove into the tree line of the woods and took cover behind a bush, watching the house. The back door opened, and the man stepped outside, scanning the yard. I felt his gaze pass over us, but it was too dark for him to see. Suddenly, he turned his head back toward us. "Joe, he's coming," I whispered. "What?" Anthony asked, panic rising in his voice. "Dude, get up! We gotta run!" The man was approaching us quickly. We sprinted through the woods, the leaves crunching underfoot, giving away our position. When Anthony tripped, I crouched down beside him, hoping we had escaped far enough. Moments later, footsteps approached from the direction we had come. They slowed down just 2 trees away from us as we lay face down in the leaves. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps moved off in another direction. Once we were sure we were safe, we dashed back toward the house. Over the sound of leaves crunching and my heavy breathing, I thought I heard more footsteps behind us. We made it back to the backyard and into the house, this time remembering to shut the back door. Finally, we were able to call the police. Anthony stayed on the line while I patrolled the back windows, trying to spot anyone outside. It was so dark that I could barely see, so I made a decision that seems foolish now. I turned on the backyard lights. Immediately, I saw him standing by a large tree in the distance. He turned and disappeared into the woods. That was the last time Anthony and I ever saw him. I would be lying if I said we didn't hear occasional knocks at our windows or something cliché. No, that was it. 5 years have passed and nothing has happened. I sometimes wonder if it was somehow linked to the prank call. Maybe it was, but it doesn't really make sense. This is the story of how Anthony and I almost died during a break-in. In a different experience, my wife and I have had our share of arguments. But one night, she wouldn't stop complaining about the smallest things. It reached a boiling point when I forgot to put the toilet seat down, and she yelled at me with an ear-piercing voice. I couldn't take it anymore, so I called my buddy Paul, who offered me a place to crash for the night. I was exhausted and needed a break from my crazy wife. Paul lived in a large house, which was another source of contention for my wife, who always remarked that my friends had nicer homes than we did. We shared a few beers and had a good talk. He suggested I stay as long as I needed, but I assured him I would only stay for one night. I didn't want to be a burden. I slept in one of his 3 guest bedrooms. Surprisingly, he had only used one of them so far, reserving the others for future parties. The guest bedrooms were lined up next to each other, while Paul's bedroom was across the hall. The setup was odd, but it allowed me to hear strange noises coming from the next room. Initially, I assumed it was Paul, but the sounds became annoying, so I decided to check it out. I tried the doorknob, but it was locked. I cracked open the door to Paul's room and asked about the noise. He was already in bed and hadn't heard anything. When I inquired why he kept the doors locked, he explained that he stored personal belongings in there. I warned him about the strange noises, but he told me to go back to sleep and come to him if I heard anything else. I returned to bed, but half an hour later, I heard a faint tapping on the wall, followed by a quiet voice. I jolted up and ran back to Paul's room. This time, he took me seriously. He grabbed the key to the 2 locked doors and unlocked the one next to mine. We stepped inside and felt a cold breeze hit us. The window was wide open, and the closet was ajar. As we searched the room, we noticed the bed had strange marks on it, as if someone had been there. The closet was filled with empty bags, and Paul's valuables were missing. Suddenly, Paul bolted out into the hallway. I was confused until I realized he was checking the other room. I followed him as he unlocked the door to the third guest bedroom. The first thing we saw was a dark figure jumping out the window onto the patio roof. Paul almost leapt after him, but we decided to run outside through the back door instead. By the time we got outside, the figure had vanished. What we found in that room was far more disturbing. The white sheets on the bed were stained with blood, and the butcher knife Paul had been missing lay on the floor, also with blood on it. All of his valuables were gone. It became clear that someone, likely a homeless person or a dangerous drug addict, had been living in Paul's home for over a week. He had even mentioned how quickly his food disappeared, despite being so skinny when we were drinking. That made a lot more sense now. As far as we know, none of them were ever caught. I remember it like it was yesterday, my first sleepover, a significant moment in my childhood. I was 10 years old and at my good friend Jordan's house. He had a huge basement where we could play video games until 1 in the morning, then sleep on the couches. Skipping our teeth brushing like little rebels, we settled down on the couches. I fell asleep easily, but woke up at an unknown hour to find the TV still on, displaying a blank screen that emitted dim light. In that light, I noticed a tall object in the far corner of the basement, near the stairs. I couldn't describe it, but it almost reached the ceiling. When the TV turned off, plunging the room into darkness, I was terrified. I shut my eyes and lay motionless, not even remembering when I fell back asleep. The next thing I knew, I was jolted awake by horrified screaming coming from upstairs. It was Jordan's mom. He woke up too, and we exchanged worried glances before sprinting upstairs to his parents' bedroom. His mom was crying as his dad turned the room upside down, searching for whatever had frightened her. He rushed past us, looking for anyone in the house, but there was no one there. No signs of entry or exit. Jordan and I are still friends today. The last time I brought this up, he said his mom doesn't like to talk about it, but she once admitted she saw a tall, dark figure standing by their bedroom door. I'm convinced that was what I saw in the basement that night.